I don't know much about the military, other than we spend ungodly amounts on it for unclear reasons. I do know that if I was going to look for fraud and waste and abuse, I would probably start with our defense budget, which is larger than, which is twice the size of the rest of the world's defense budgets combined. I don't think that's Pete Hegseth's agenda when firing all the generals. I think that is, he's doing a woke purge. And let's be clear, what he's doing is they are making sure that anybody they hire in these positions are not going to talk back to Trump. Because last time they had a problem with the independence of the military, or at least the idea that the military had taken a pledge, a vow to support the Constitution as opposed to Trump. In addition to firing the top generals, they fired the top military lawyers of the Marines, the Army, and the Navy, I think it was, or the Air Force. 3 of the 4 branches of the service. Maybe it was the Air Force, Navy, and Army. And I know people like, why would they fire the lawyers? These are the people who advise the military, like, what does the Constitution say about this? What you should be, what is your legal obligation to follow what may be an illegal order? And Pete Hegseth says, well, that's not why we fired them. And then restates that exact reason.
Branches. For people who may not know, I mean, they give advice to the military about what is lawful and what isn't. Not surprisingly, there's been some backlash to those who are worried about their removal. One Georgetown law professor says this: Trump also firing the Army, Navy, and Air Force JAGs. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about.
Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second. Let's just go back. You get Rosa back up on the screen there. This is her hyperbole. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. I don't know who she is or what that hyperbole is about. Let me restate what she says in my non-hyperbole way.
Break the law, you get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these people.
Wait.
In their spots?
In their spots? They don't want to be roadblock. Wait, so she said hyperbole is when you say, when you're about to break the law and they tell you to slow down. And he says, we don't want them to be obstacles.
In their spots. Is their spots constitutionality?
In their spots. Let's go back just a little bit. In their spots, in the legal spot.
I think he realizes that.
Oh, yeah, no, he realizes, like, wait a second. That was the reason why we fired them. I'm not supposed to say that. She nailed it.
Who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these TJAGs inside the military, traditionally they've been elected by each other or chosen by each other, which is exactly how it works often with the chairman as well. Small group of insulated officers who perpetuate the status quo. Well, guess what? The status quo hasn't worked very well at the Pentagon. It's time for fresh blood. So we're going to open
branches.
So we're going to get rid of the people who are in charge of telling us whether we broke the law. You know, another way for status quo is also like the legal system or the Constitution. That's been status quo.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I think we all agree that as Secretary of Defense, you have the authority to fire generals based upon their skill sets and their aptitude and whatnot. And put up this post from Atrios. Let's just see the New York Times. I just zoom in on the New York Times part of it.
Okay.
So just make sure we cut that out.
Yep.
And this is how the New York Times reported the firing of of General Brown, the Joint Chiefs of Staff head, Mr. Hegseth, has previously said General Brown should be fired because of his woke focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the military. First of all, you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mr. Hegseth said at an appearance on the Sean Ryan show in November. Sean Ryan's not one of those war criminals, is he?
No, he's
a different guy. In November, he added that any general involved with DEI efforts should be fired. Either you're for war fighting, and that's it, he said. That's the only litmus test we care about. You know, as the New York Times writes that, in response to Hegseth's firing of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown, it sounds not with something that I would agree with. I find it hard to believe that this woke stuff is really taking over that much. Yeah. But I understand that's their, you know, it's unreasonable, but it's reasonable, if you know what I mean. Let's scroll down and see how the AP wrote up this. Again, hat tip to Duncan Black over at Eschaton, or Atrios, I should say. Atrios over at Eschaton. Here's how the AP talks about this. Interesting that none of this stuff made it into the New York Times article.
The New York Times headline or slogan is "All the news that's fit to print." So this is what isn't fit.
What isn't fit to print is Hegseth had previously taken aim at Brown. Oh, okay. This is from the podcast, the same podcast. First of all, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he said flatly in a podcast in November. Oh, that must be the Sean Ryan show that the Times alerted us to. Okay. And in one of his books, this must be, they're talking about, what do you call it, Pete Hegseth's book. Well, I mean.
Blurbed by Tulsi, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but how would you'd have to read it. In one of his books, he questioned whether Brown got the job because he was black. Huh. Was it because of his skin color or his skill? We'll never know, but always doubt, which on its face seems unfair to CQ. But since he has made the race card one of his biggest calling cards, it doesn't really much matter, Hegseth wrote. That is a weird context to give. To take what he says about the Joint Chiefs of Staff in his book and and compare it to what he said in November on a podcast, and to see how those two things meld together. I don't know. That gives just like way too much context. Like, is it right to present what someone wrote about somebody that he acted upon in that way? Like the AP did? They're rogue, man. That's right. They're totally rogue. Oh, I get it. Because they're still so woke that they're calling it the Gulf of Mexico.
Exactly.
I mean, the New York, like, what is the justification the New York Times is supposed to give you the context of this guy being fired? And the presumption is you hear Hegseth's, status quo is over. The Pentagon has done things wrong. I'm firing him. It's my prerogative. That's what he says on the news program the day after he fires them. Also, he has a little bit of trouble when he's got to be talking about, we've got the lawyers gotten rid of too. And then you go back all the way to November to quote him on a podcast where he's talking about why he doesn't want. Well, if that makes sense, if it makes sense to provide that context, why would you leave out the context of Hegseth's book, where he basically says the dude only got to be hired as Joint Chiefs of Staff because he's a black guy?
And presumably wonders that about any black person in the military.
There's no way to know. The only way to make sure that a black guy is not hired because he's black is to not hire him for those jobs.
Get the white guys with
just
crusade
get the
tattoos.
normal people in. The people who don't have a race. The people who are just normal. They're not, they're not this one thing or the other thing. They're just normal and deserving and meritorious. and not going to be obstacles to
their spots.
In their spots.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with the military is there was too many obstacles in terms of legality that they were being caught up by.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.